Hello everyone, this is Ankur Buddhiraja, an assistant professor at the BBA department of GIMS Greater Noida. In this lecture of marketing management, today I shall be taking up a very interesting topic which is consumer decision making, studied under the topic consumer behavior. Before we talk about the definitions of behavior and consumer decision making, we first have to understand and discuss what kind of decisions a consumer takes. Usually, a consumer takes a purchase decision where he goes to a shop or an outlet, selects a brand, chooses a color, chooses a particular style or fashion, etc. Now, all these activities are actually the motivating or underlying motives behind the final purchase or non purchase decision. That means the behavioral aspects shown by a consumer leading to a particular decision of purchasing or non purchasing of any commodity is consumer behavior or consumer decision making. Going by a definition given by some experts, consumer behavior is an aggregate of all those actions, reactions, and activities of consumers in the marketplace and the underlying motives to those actions. It is the behavior of consumers which they display while purchasing, using, evaluating, and disposing of products, services, and ideas that they expect will satisfy their needs. That means while making a purchase of a commodity, all those actions that a consumer either displays or all those motives which are hidden together form consumer buying behavior or decision making basis. Roger Blackwell and Paul Mignard define consumer behavior as the actions and decision processes of people who purchase goods and services for personal consumption. That means a study of any consumer behavior will help the marketers in understanding and getting the answers to the questions like what do consumers buy, why do they buy, when and from where do they buy, how often do they buy, how often they use a particular commodity, etc. If you see, these questions are leading to a particular pattern of behaviors or responses of a particular consumer under certain circumstances. The next very obvious topic to be studied is what is the importance of studying consumer behavior, or why should marketers study the behavior of their consumers? We should first understand that consumers do not always act or react in the similar manner every time. Therefore, it is important to keep a check on the decision making behavior of our target consumers continuously. We can easily learn and understand the consumer preferences, which are dynamic and are very highly diversified. Through study of consumer behavior, we can understand these preferences. Also, we can get knowledge about the marketing mix that would satisfy the consumers better. In other words, we can have a judicious and very effective blend of marketing mix strategies if we know the behavioral pattern of our consumers. This marketing mix will be much better than the situation where consumer behavior is not understood. Also, the knowledge of consumer behavior can serve as a guide to plan and implement the marketing strategies successfully. Framing marketing strategies is one aspect, while their implementation is another very important aspect. The framed marketing strategies can be implemented successfully if we know the consumer buying pattern and their decision making processes. Moreover, implementing the marketing concept itself calls for studying consumer behavior. We know today's marketing concept starts and ends with consumers and their needs and wants. Therefore, this is only possible if we study why and how consumers react in a particular situation. Also, Rapid introduction of new products with advancement in technology has made the study of consumer behavior imperative and unavoidable. Last point, the consumer researches have shown that consumers do not like to use identical products and prefer different products on the basis of their changing needs, preferences, and lifestyles. So, an exhaustive consumer behavior study will help the firms and organizations to understand the dynamism behind the changing needs and preferences of consumers. The next important topic in buying process or consumer buying process is the buying roles. Usually, in consumer buying process, we have five roles to be played by different individuals. We have the role of an initiator, the influencer, the decider, the buyers, the users. Now I will take up an example of purchase of a car. For example, in a family, there has been discussion on purchasing a car. Now this discussion may be initiated, let us say, by the head of the family who has started feeling the need of purchasing a car. In this case, the head of the family who initiated the discussions and the process of buying a car is the initiator. Therefore, the person who begins the process of considering a purchase and highlights the need or problem faced is the initiator. As I mentioned in the example, the head of the family, that is, let us say, the father, is the initiator because he started feeling the need to have a car and discusses and communicates this need to the rest of the family members. Now comes influencers. Now in the family, there are two teenager kids. They know about different models and different brands of cars. So they started influencing the decision of the initiator by recommending their point of views and by recommending certain brands based on their understanding. Since they are the people who persuade the initiator to buy a particular brand or product by presenting some facts and information, so they are influencers. Now, next comes the decider. The decider is the individual who has the power or authority to make the ultimate purchase decision. Let us say the father, who was the initiator, is now the decider also and decides to buy a particular brand of car from a particular showroom. Since he has taken the final buying decision, so he is the decider. Next comes the buyers, the person who conducts the transaction, visits the store, makes the payment and takes the delivery, who understands and undertakes the delivery and the buying process is the buyer. Let us say the son of the family and the father of the family go together to buy the car. So these two are buyers. Now comes the user, who is the actual consumer who will use the commodity for ultimate consumption or ultimate want satisfaction. So the user will be the whole family or all the family members who will use the car for their personal satisfaction. Moving on, we have a very important topic called consumer buying decision process, also known as the consumer behavior process. This process talks about the chronology that is involved in final purchase decision of a consumer. We usually start the process with understanding or recognizing the need or the problem. What need or what problem is being faced by a consumer or a group of consumers or customers that they have to buy a particular product which can satisfy that need or can solve that problem. So in the first stage, we have to understand and recognize the need or the problem that will force and persuade us to buy certain products. Now we will move on to the second stage, which is information search. That is, there are so many different alternatives which will be available in the market in form of products and services that can satisfy a particular need and solve a particular problem. So in this second stage, there is an exhaustive search of information which is got from different sources, let us say internet, social media, friends, and other influencers like family members, relatives, etc. In this stage, the buyers or the would-be buyers try to gather as much possible as information so that they can take a wise decision of purchasing a particular commodity. In the third stage of evaluating alternatives, since I already told you there are so many choices and alternative options available in the market, each and every alternative which is now known on the basis of information search is evaluated and a thorough cost benefit analysis is conducted on them. This is done because there are certain factors which influence the purchase decision of buyers. Say for example their personal choice, their perception, their budget and pocket, etc. So each and every alternative solution is evaluated on certain factors, and then in the fourth stage an intention to purchase the commodity is framed. In this stage also there is an intention that lays down the foundation for purchase decision. Still the product is not bought. The product will be bought in the next stage where the final purchase decision will be done. In the final purchase decision, the buyer or the customer goes to a particular outlet, makes choice of a particular brand and a particular style and color, makes the payment and takes the delivery and brings the product home. In the last stage, which is the post-purchase behavior, as the name suggests, it comes only after the purchase is done, the good or commodity is used, and in the post-purchase behavior, the customer or the user or the consumer tries to analyze and evaluate whether he has made the right decision or not, or whether he has taken the right step towards satisfaction of his need, whether he has chosen the right product, right style and right brand, etc. In this stage, he faces a problem called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is mental or psychological confusion, which is a dilemma that is faced by certain consumers or customers who keep on deciding whether they have made the right purchase decision or not. So in these slides, if you see, I have talked about each and every stage one by one in details, and whatever I have spoken during the flow chart is shown in these slides only. Moving on, we have to understand the factors influencing consumer behavior. Now there are 4 set of factors that impact the purchase decision making or the consumer behavior while making purchases of commodities. These factors are sometimes very direct and sometimes indirect, but have an impact on the consumer buying process or decision making process. We will start with the first set of factors, which is cultural factors. Culture and subculture define the lifestyle of any individual. My culture will lay down the foundation of my purchases. The community to which I belong actually is indirectly involved in my purchase decisions many times. Say for example, there is a culture of buying new clothes on the festival of Diwali. So if I am a Hindu and I belong to this cultural belief, I will try buying new clothes during the festival of Diwali. Then my social class, which may be upper class, upper middle class, lower middle class and lower class. These classes are defined by Philip Kotler in his book Marketing Management, where he has actually focused on the social status that a particular customer belongs to also decides his purchase decision, because social status talks about 2 major things or covers 2 major things: the lifestyle and the budget or the pocket of the customer. So if I belong to the upper class or upper middle class, I may have a lot of money to buy conspicuous and expensive products, while if I belong to lower middle class or lower class section or state strata of society, I may not be having that much budget to buy high end and premium products. Moving on to social factors. When I talk about social factors, I talk about the influence or the persuasion of the social groups I belong to. These groups can be of relatives, family, friends, colleagues, and other reference groups which may be having an impact on my purchase decision. Taking the example of buying a car, my friends or my colleagues may recommend a particular brand and I may take a decision based on this recommendation. Similarly, my family members may also influence my decision to purchase a particular commodity. Next comes the personal factors, where the age and life cycle stage, the economic condition, the personal lifestyle, the personality and self concept, and the occupation to which an individual customer belongs also influence many a times the purchase decisions. Usually, old age people or mid age people prefer goods and services with a logic. While if I talk about the youngsters or teenagers, they make purchases not on the basis of logic usually, but their purchase behavior is more impulsive. So they may try preferring to buy something which is jazz and as per the latest fashion. Similarly, on the basis of occupation, if I say if I'm a farmer, my purchase decisions will be different and my purchase behavior will be different than that of a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher. Similarly, when I talk about my lifestyle or economic conditions, that will decide what kind of products I prefer or choose and what is my pocket or budget. Last set of factors is psychological factors, where I talk about the cognitive factors like motivation, perception, learning, beliefs, and attitudes. So, my perception and my past learning lays down the basis for my future purchases. Similarly, what are my convictions and beliefs will decide my purchase behavior often. Moving on, we will study about industrial buyers and industrial buying behavior. So far, we did simple consumer buying behavior, where consumers who are involved in purchasing fast mover consumer goods or consumer durables has been studied. Now we will talk about the industrial buyers. Who are industrial buyers? These are the individuals or the firms who usually purchase goods and services not for their personal consumption but for some other use and actually are involved in industrial markets. These markets are composed of business units and organizations that purchase goods and services to be used directly or indirectly in the production of other goods and services to be resold to other buyers. That means industrial buyers are those who make purchase or purchases of goods and services not for their personal consumption but for further production, so that the goods and services further produced can be resold to ultimate buyers. Also, we have to understand what is usually sold in industrial markets. So, I already told you that industrial goods are those which are meant for further production or reselling and are not meant for personal consumption. So, these goods may be raw materials which are used in manufacturing of finished goods, some components, parts, and sub-assemblies like car steering, car tires, car seats, upholstery, etc., which may not be used by the industrial buyers directly, but may be used by them to manufacture and decorate a particular car to be resold in the market. Then construction material like iron rods, cement, bricks, etc., heavy and light machinery to be used in a factory, maintenance and repair operating items like switches, wires, screws, or any other items used in maintenance processes, services like legal, consultancy services, etc. So if you see the examples, we will be very clear about the fact that these are not used personally for personal consumption. They are used by the firms and organizations or individuals for production of finished and semi-finished goods to be further sold in the market so that profits can be earned. Now we will talk about the characteristics of industrial markets. So when I talk about industrial markets, in comparison to the consumer markets, there is a limited variety of goods available for industrial consumers. Say for example, if I talk about selling of airplanes to a particular company, I may not be having large variety because it is difficult to have large variety of such high value products. Therefore, unlike shampoo, soaps, hair oils, or let us say clothes, we have limited variety of goods for industrial markets and industrial buyers. Second, geographical concentration. The consumer markets are usually widely diversified and dispersed across the world. While if I talk about geographical concentration of industrial markets, they are popularly concentrated at some places only or some geographical regions only. The next point is supply side focus. That means we are serving the suppliers, not the customers. These are the buyers. Industrial buyers are the suppliers of goods and services who supply goods and services further for final consumption of the buyers. So we will focus on all the aspects of the supply side. Then the next point is personal selling plays a major role. Unlike advertisements in newspapers or magazines or let us say television, here personal selling has a significant role. Companies cannot afford to lose an industrial buyer because the purchase volume and value is too high. As a result, companies, to give importance to the industrial buyer, usually send some representative of the company to meet these buyers face to face. Therefore, personal selling has a lot of important role to play. Next point, less use of advertising. As I already told, in case of FMCG products or consumer products, a lot of advertising is used and which is non-personal in nature. While I talk about industrial buyers and industrial market to be served, we don't use a lot of advertising in comparison to consumer markets. Next is evaluation of suppliers. The industrial buyers actually take a lot of time in evaluating multiple suppliers of the commodity because the volume and value of purchase is too high. So they do not settle or compromise with any supplier. They actually go by thorough evaluation of all of them and take a final decision of a supplier. Next, technical features are more important in comparison to consumer products. Here, since the products are more technical in nature, so technical features, utility and functionality of the products is more important and is emphasized. Next is planned purchases. Usually in industrial markets, the purchases are not impulsive or impulse based. They are pre-planned and take a lot of time in planning the purchase of such products. Moreover, the purchase decision process is time consuming. Usually when I talk about the purchase of FMCG products, we take impulsive and quick decisions, while if I talk about the industrial markets, the decision making process is very time consuming. A lot of people are involved and this decision may take a year or 6 months to make the final purchase decision. Next, the nature of purchase process is very structured, unlike the consumer buying decision process, which may be loosely structured or structured or unstructured. Next is time, quality and promptness of delivery is very important. As a consumer, as a normal consumer, we may sometimes compromise on the quality or untimely delivery, while if I talk about industrial markets, the timely delivery, quality and promptness of delivery is very important. The companies may tend to lose a customer in case any of these is compromised at any point of time. Next is distribution channels. When I talk about distribution channels, I talk about shorter distribution channels are emphasized. We cannot have a longer distribution channel with a lot of intermediaries involved, because the purchase value and volume is too high, and timely delivery is very important. Next is, as I mentioned, high value of purchases. The value and volume of purchases of industrial buyers is very high, and they may usually run in crores and millions of rupees. And the last point is, nature of demand is derived. That means there is no direct demand. Usually the demand is derived from the demand of the ultimate products to be produced for personal consumption. Say for example, if I am manufacturing cars, so I am demanding from the supplier the car tires. Now these car tires are dependent upon the demand of the cars in the market. Therefore the demand of car tires in the industrial market is derived from the demand of the car in the consumer market. Moving on, a quick look at the distinction between industrial buying and consumer buying. So if I talk about industrial buying, recognition of problem and need, the purchases are usually planned and needs are anticipated and pre-planned in industrial buying, while consumer buying may be based on a quick action where it is not necessary to have a lot of planned purchase usually. Next is frequency of purchases. When I talk about industrial buying, the purchases are periodical and the frequency is low, while consumer buying is very high and frequent in nature. Next is determination of product characteristics. As I told you, industrial buying usually happens with a lot of logic, so it is systematic and based on cost benefit analysis, while when I talk about consumer buying, usually whatever is affordable or whatever is liked by the customer at a point of time is purchased. Next is product characteristics. So technical features are very important in case of industrial buying, because the products are technical in nature, while in case of consumer buying, the user benefits or the product benefits are given importance. When I talk about search for suppliers, usually industrial buying talk about a lot of lays emphasis on careful search for suppliers. And when I talk about consumer buying, usually the search is done through in the immediate trade area or community of residents, and we do not search for suppliers across India or across the country. Next is nature of buying. So I told you, it is already explained. This is more logical and rational, while this in consumer buying it is more emotional and sometimes impulsive. Number of people involved in purchase decision, who are always more in industrial buying. A lot of people are involved in industrial buying, while if I talk about consumer buying, there are less number of people. I alone can buy anything for myself. There is no need to involve a lot of people. Nature of demand, industrial buying we have derived demand, while in consumer buying we have direct demand. Then analysis of proposals. Usually industrial buying happens with a lot of proposals and bids formally invited, analyzed, evaluated, and then final decision is taken. While if I talk about consumer buying, we do not go by all such decisions and proposals. We usually go to the markets and or the store or shop and make a purchase. Then supplier evaluation, which is extensive in case of industrial buying, and we usually do not have a lot of evaluation in case of consumer buying. Performance feedback, proper file maintained and proper formal feedback is given in case of industrial buying, because the nature of products is high volume and premium, while in case of consumer buying we have an informal feedback system reflecting a feeling of satisfaction or dissatisfaction, which is very subjective and relative. And then if I talk about the length of distribution channels, usually shorter and direct channels are used in industrial buying, while we use long multiple links involved in the distribution channel in consumer buying. Means of communication or promotion, as I told you, direct selling or personal selling is usually used in case of industrial buying, while advertising and communication through printed media, audio or visual commercials is used in consumer buying. So there is a lot of difference between industrial buying and consumer buying, which is very clear through these differences. With this, I come to the end of consumer buying behavior, where we talked about two types of buying behaviors involved. One is consumer buying and the other is industrial buying. The next topic I will take up in the next lectures. Thank you so much.